This episode is brought to you by the Toyota Grand Highlander. Life's journey brings constant change filled with exciting surprises and grand challenges. And with its spaciousness, power, and style, the Toyota Grand Highlander is more than a vehicle. It's your partner in embracing all life throws at you. From the spacious adult-sized third row to seating for up to 8 passengers, the Toyota Grand Highlander is up for every grand challenge. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
Dr. Sandra Morgan, who's a renowned expert in global human trafficking issues, serves as the executive director of the Global Center for Women and Justice at Vanguard University. She has been a key member of the White House Human Trafficking Task Force. She's done many things. Author of a book entitled Ending Human Trafficking, a Handbook of Strategies for the Church Today. Rabbi Gerson, Rev, she is the Associate Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. She works together with me, a leading voice at the intersection of faith, human rights, child protection, with a special focus on combating human trafficking and safeguarding the most vulnerable members of society. Welcome to both of you. Let me just say this. The other day I'm walking down the street and I'm talking to a rabbi, and he says the following to me. My wife was a victim of abuse. She went to her rabbi seeking support. And he said to her, I want you to go home and I want you to repair the relationship at home. Not knowing what to do, but listening to her rabbi, she went home, tried to make nice, and was victimized again. I'm sure this is a story you hear many times. And it just shows if we're ill-equipped to advise people, we shouldn't be advising people. We're putting them back, in this very dangerous situation. So talk about that.
Firstly, thank you, Rabbi, for having the Rev and Rabbi. We are really excited for this conversation. And to start by answering your question, Rabbi, is the reality that we don't get this kind of training when we are in seminary. And it's really important when we are meeting with people in their most vulnerable state that we do no harm. Just like a doctor, we don't want to cause harm. And we as clergy have an opportunity to either be a resource for this person or a roadblock. And we always want to make sure that we are resources, that we want to get them to safety. We want to get them help, and we want to empower them. So we don't want them to have to go home and suffer.
In the curricula of the seminaries, have we introduced courses now, any training, so people are more proficient in this area?
There's no standardization around the country, and certainly not around the world. We have a long way to go.
I question both of you, our guests, because we get into areas now of religious beliefs, religious doctrine that doesn't allow for divorce or doesn't allow for the woman to rebel against the authority of the husband. There are also cultural customs that we've encountered in our congregation when we're getting people from other parts of the globe who are coming in, and the cultural practice, customs, or traditions allow for this without any outside interference. How do you respond to that?
When you want to take a look at what theology says, what we all agree on is the dignity of the human being. And if we're going to allow for cultural practice that infringes upon that dignity, then we need to have a much more robust conversation and really start with education. Let's go read the text. Let's go see what it says. And how do we then respond? And how do we use our text to uphold that dignity? We want to hold that as sacrosanct in all of our faiths. Nobody believes that one person should be allowed to harm another. We don't believe that there's one partner in a relationship that is more powerful than the other. Marriage is partnership. How does that look? How do we shape that, and how do we support it?
I think in a cross-cultural context and interfaith, I've had a few experiences that helped me begin to shape how I explain my position and my experience. I did my dissertation work in Iraq on building capacity for women in higher education. And I ran into some of these circumstances where culture minimized women and their voice and how they could respond to any kind of injustice. And my colleagues, women in higher education, began to teach me how to have those conversations. And I was focused on my very Western UN Declaration of Human Rights. And I was introduced to the Cairo Declaration of Human Rights that led me to more of an alignment with what Rabbi Gerson just said about the value for dignity that is across all of our faith traditions. And we lean back into that and make efforts for correcting cultural issues that detract from that common value.
So how do you deal with issues if you're in a society where, for example, having a child bride is acceptable, where mutilation is acceptable? How does one correct that when you're dealing with a tradition that sanctions it? Rabbi Gerson?
So if we want to talk about child marriage, there's no faith community in the world that requires child marriage. Can it be optional? Probably. Is it required? Never. Here in the United States, only 13 states so far have outlawed child marriage entirely before the age of 18. We have a long way to go even in our country. I believe it was earlier this week that the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., finally outlawed marriage before the age of 18. Places like California, where Dr. Morgan and Sandie is sitting, has yet to make that change. New York did. The first state to actually outlaw marriage before 18 in the United States was Delaware, followed by New Jersey. So we understand that there are cultural norms and cultural practice, but they're not necessarily embedded in faith traditions and Scripture.
But you have faith leaders who condone that habit, all right?
I'm not sure that they always actually condone it. I think there are often economic and cultural issues that take precedence over some of their preferred approaches. And I'm thinking specifically to some of the conflict in the Middle East, and when the Syrian conflict first broke out and the refugees were flooding into the northern part of Iraq in the Kurdistan region. And when they were in the camps, families were marrying their daughters off to wealthy Middle Easterners, not because they believed in child marriage, but because they were trying to help their families survive and protect their daughters. So the families, the faith leaders, they were all making an accommodation to the circumstances. And that economic piece is often part of the issue driving child marriage. I'm happy to report that here in California, we have a robust advocacy group where we're working to get our laws aligned with reducing child marriage in our state.
America has a history fighting against the patriarchal model that was present at the inception and based in Christianity here in American history. How do you respond to this idea of patriarchy as a social construct for marriage that comes out of religious belief?
So I talk about this a lot. I teach on this in the classroom, that the preferred model biblically is around a mutuality, mutual submission. It isn't an either or, it's a both and. Unfortunately, our culture has built a more hierarchical model with patriarchy being more prevalent. But the research shows that when women are at the table and we have more of a balance, we have better outcomes for the community. There's a well-known expression about the girl effect. When you educate girls in a community, a society where girls haven't always had access to education, the whole community is healthier and stronger morally and fiscally. And I think if you study, because my work around human trafficking, I have studied the life and work of William Wilberforce. And one of the things that he modeled for us was top-down as a strategy. And he was part of the House of Lords. He worked on legislation. And so I do that at the same time that I'm working with victims and survivors who are still escaping and being restored to their communities.
We're going to take a break here. We're going to come back with more discussion with Rabbi Diana Gerson, Dr. Sandie Morgan, and let's also talk about some of the positive developments that we've seen. We hear all about the pain, which we need to discuss, but there's been some progress that we need to discuss as well. Talking about issues impacting women, men, and society. And I'm proud to say, Rabbi Gerson, at the Board of Rabbis, and you're, of course, very, very committed to seeking that whenever we have a program, we have participation of women. We don't have a program that is what we call a manel, only men on the panel. We try to have female rabbis who are sharing the podium with the male rabbis. And I have to say, it's been very refreshing to look out and see an audience comprised of different denominational backgrounds sitting there and listening to people who are different from one another.
I will say for myself, I was born in 1974, but the first woman was ordained in the Reform Jewish community in 1972. And I remember very vividly my grandmother's bat mitzvah in 1977, and my grandparents had a female rabbi. She was the first ordained by the Reconstructionist movement. So in my memory, there was never a time where I couldn't consider being a rabbi. There was never a time where it was considered to be absolutely not. Girls can't do this job. For me, it was always possible. But
in certain circles, you can't have a female rabbi, but there are other leadership positions for women.
Absolutely.
Right.
And women, they run the shuls. They run the synagogues. They are involved in every aspect of community life. And that's really, I think, one of the great things that we see is that the raising up of female leadership within the community. Yeah. And I see that now more and more as I work interfaith and between different parts of the world. I meet so many incredible, dynamic, fierce women who are out there not just championing women's rights, but really the rights of the family, children, and community at large.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to the present day, Dr. Morgan, we have major denominations, Protestant denominations in our country, who still don't allow for women pastors. Have you encountered any of these?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is such a challenge for me because I grew up in a denomination that has always ordained women. My dad was my Sunday school teacher, and he treated me the same as any of the male students in the class. So when I sort of left home and found out that wasn't the norm, that was a shock for me. And I spent a lot of time rereading the policies in my own faith tradition, rereading the scriptures, and I became convinced for myself instead of just being told by my denominational leaders. And I'm convinced that this is my calling and that God ordains me to do this as a woman.
Yeah. You know, you have in the Jewish Orthodox world places where women cannot serve as rabbis. But I think what you're seeing is an increasing opportunities for women to assume leadership positions. So whether they're called a rabbah, rabbinite, educational director, whatever it is, there is a role and responsibility given to women.
Absolutely. And we see that in not just in the Jewish world, but we're seeing that in so many different faith traditions. And I particularly love looking at faith traditions that don't have ordained clergy. So it is everybody is a leader, and how they really help to raise all voices, because no one owns the Word of God, right? The Scripture, we can all sit and read it. We can all sit and grapple with it. We can all sit and learn from it, and we can all be inspired by the divine.
Rev, I've been to your church, Christian Cultural Center, and there, from the time you walk in to the time you walk out, you see women participating in meaningful roles. It's,
look.
and they're not called reverend, but they certainly occupy a prominent position.
Yeah, we have ministers in our congregation. We have deaconesses. We have different levels of leadership and participation. That if it weren't for the women, we would not be Christian cultural center the way we are, as efficient and productive as we are. It's amazing. Yeah, but I have colleagues who push back against the notion of having a woman minister.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's a cultural shift for many, but it's coming in many places. We've seen where it was, we see where it is, and who knows where it's going to be. But I think men have recognized that we need to have women at the table. Whatever the title is, we need to have women at the table. And we men have a responsibility. One of the failings, I think, and I blame this on the male group, is there are all these conferences that women have on inequality, and there are very few men sitting at the table in those conferences. Am I right?
Well, the last 2 weeks we convened at the United Nations under UN Women for the Commission on the Status of Women. So it was the 69th gathering of the Commission on the Status of Women. And I was on panels, and even Rabbi Potaznik was on a panel. And he was on a panel that was, he was the only man on the panel.
And I'm proposing a commission on the status of men, Rev.
But I will tell you, it was an incredible thing to see the streets of New York City, which is flooded with women from everywhere, and most of them finding their way to the commission. And it's an incredible moment to see women having incredibly important conversations with their representatives from the member states.
Rev, you think we're going to have this discussion 25 years from now?
Absolutely.
We'll still be we'll still be discussing inequalities where women pay the price for it. Sandie,
I want to say something about the men. I love that you changed panel to mantle, and I'm going to borrow that from you in my community. But one of the gaps that I've seen is with the rise of women's rights. I mean, we can even have our own credit card since 1974. We can own property, all of those things. We did not teach our young men how to manage that change. We taught young girls, a girl can do this, see Jane run, all those things. We have not kept up with our opportunity for coaching and mentoring young men. So there are lots of misconceptions about what masculinity is. And you hear people pounding on young men about toxic masculinity, and they really haven't had a lot of attention towards teaching them responsible, shared leadership. And I think that's the next conversation.
And that's part of our growth. Yeah, that's part of the growth of our ministry in terms of families, because we have a strong men's ministry and women's ministry, but we really focus on the responsibility of the man in terms of the family and his responsibility towards his children and wife and within society. And you're absolutely right. If we don't get the men on course, it's going to be difficult to have that kind of complementary relationship that should exist, or mutuality, as you call it, Dr. Morgan. Yeah.
We've come to the end of the segment, the end of the program, which has been fascinating. And I think we need to spend more time talking about these issues. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I think we can all agree, we're not better off as a rabbinic body. I talk about the Jewish world. We're not better off as an organization, no matter what the denomination is, without the participation of women. If it's going to be a male-only group, I think we're missing a major piece. And
well, Rabbi, if we go to the text, it says that God announced that Adam needed help.
Yeah.
That
and then you see
right there.
And what
right?
happened
and
after? What happened after he got the help? Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Sandie and Dr. Diana. Sandie, the book is called "Ending Human Trafficking: A Handbook of Strategies for the Church Today." Thank you both for being on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Greg Kelly here with an urgent retirement warning. President Trump's return is set to usher in a new golden age, but growing trade tensions and China's ruthless attack on the dollar have rattled the markets. That's why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so too have Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. That's why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you to do the exact same thing, especially now after Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. So visit freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's freegoldguide.com/Kelly.